Hello, my name is Kina Goze. I am a traditional artist who specializes in using colored pencils, and today I'm going to show you how I drew this creative portrait using Prismacolor dual-ended art markers and colored pencils. After selecting a reference photo of a portrait that I edited myself, I used the Prismacolor Coal Erase pencils to lightly sketch out the features of the drawing. During this sketching process, my main focus is to get the main features of the face down. At the same time, I'm going to lightly block out and shade in the shadowed areas to start establishing some of those lights and darks. And right here, I'm just using a Blick kneaded eraser to pull off some of the pigment from the pencils before I go over with the Prismacolor markers. As I work with the markers, I layer from light to dark. I start with the more detailed parts of the face, which are the eyes, the nose, and the mouth, and I end on the larger surface areas of the skin, like the forehead, the cheeks, and the jaw. Depending on the reference photo you choose, you may or may not have other little things in the background. Like for me, I have these roses as well as these leaves right next to her face. And I want to start drawing in these as well because these are also very detailed parts that I want to get out of the way first. As I begin to further establish the values of the flowers, I use a light pink to map them out and a darker pink for the shadows and a color that's somewhere in the middle to blend them together. And the same applies for the leaves, using a lighter color for the base of the leaves, a darker color for the shadows, and a color that's somewhere in the middle to blend them together. As I move back to working on the face, the first thing I'm going to be filling in are the lips. An important thing to note is that all lips aren't naturally the same color of red. Depending on the skin tone, the color of the lips will be different. Even though the lips I am drawing do have some tones of red, that is not the overall color of what they are because the skin tone itself has more of an orange tone in that, and that is reflected in the lips, and so I want to make sure I include some of those colors. Around the whole area of the skin, I used a very light color to serve as a base. I colored it all in except for the areas in the corners of the eyes and above the lips and on the bridge of the nose because I want to preserve those to be very bright highlights. For reference, the color that I used was PM12 or light peach. At this point, my focus is to really deepen the structure and contrast around the nose. As I use a mid-tone to blend in the browns, reds, and oranges that I have used to create shadows around the skin, I am going to use that same color to develop other areas around the skin. The color I am using for this is PM130 or Deco Orange. I found that this color was really great for creating soft shadows, so as you can see I use this color a lot around the sides of her face where her eyes and cheeks meet the florals and foliage, and also around the bridge of her nose and cheekbones. At this point, I've built up quite a few layers of the skin, and I have added a lot more shadows around the nose and more details around the eyes. I'm just really trying to focus on making sure the large patches of skin are smooth and that there aren't any streaks, and that the transition between each of the lighter and darker colors are smooth. And as I finished up with the skin, I also went back in those areas that I left blank before, above the lips, on the bridge of the nose, and in the corners of the eyes with a lighter color. You'll notice around the corners of her eyes I used a yellow for the highlighted color, and that's because in the reference photo the model that I'm drawing has some makeup there and I wanted to emphasize that, and so I used yellow in that area. So at this point, I'm really satisfied with how the markers have turned out. And now over top the markers, I'm going to start drawing with colored pencils. I personally think this is the best part of the art process, not only because colored pencils are my favorite, but also because when using them, you are able to get more precise and add those details that really start to bring the piece to life. One of the reasons why I really enjoy using a marker base when working with colored pencils is because the marker base serves as a helpful guide to where I should place colors and also the tones and values of what those colors should be. It's really important to be patient in the colored pencil process because, unlike markers, colored pencils take a longer time to layer and blend together. This is where I like to get down to the nitty-gritty details of the features of the face, and also where I like to exaggerate certain values I see in the face or colors that I really like. It's especially in the areas where the cheeks and chin are that you are going to need the most patience in coloring those areas in. Because it's in those areas where it's going to be the most time consuming to blend in circular motions and in multiple layers. Now this is completely optional, but after I have built up many details of the skin, I will use a spray fixative to spray over the portrait, and once that is dried, I will go in and add any further details over top. Using a spray fixative over top your colored pencil work helps to preserve your piece for longer and also act as almost a new piece of paper to where you are able to add further details over top that you wouldn't otherwise be able to. Now that I'm satisfied with how the face turned out, I'm going to move on to the leaves in the corner and also the flowers around her eyes. Similar to how I worked on the face, I'm going to be working in multiple layers, and I'm going to be layering in light to dark. Remember having patience while working with colored pencils because, again, like I said, this process is a lot more time consuming than the marker portion. And if you chose to use tape along the sides of your portrait to create a clean border, now that you are complete with your portrait, it is time to remove it. Make sure you are doing it slowly and gently, because with too much force, it's very easy to rip the paper. Prismacolor markers and colored pencils are my favorite supplies to use when drawing, and I specifically enjoyed using them in this piece. Thank you so much for watching. I hope this video inspired you to get creative with your drawing.